Good morning. Welcome to the online Bible study here at Peoples. We hope you have had a great week. We've missed being here. Last week was our fine arts here at school, and we host that event, and so we did not get to have Bible study. I missed it because I'm excited about this new book. If you do not have it, it's called It's Time. It looks like this, so if you want to order it off of Amazon, you could do that. If you want to join along with us and you're watching online. We are a little late. I will just say we were discussing our church. My husband is doing a series on Sunday nights on why we believe what we believe. And so we got to discussing some of that. And anyway, I'm excited about it because one of the most important things I feel like for a Christian is knowing why you believe what you believe, not just because my mama said it, my daddy taught me that, my pastor said it, but what does the Bible say about why we live the way we do, why we believe the way we believe as a church? And so if you're in the area, we would love to have you join us for that. And this Sunday night, we actually have a fellowship after church called Snack. And we were laughing about that too, because we have Snack, which is Sunday night after church, and then the teens have Tack, which is teens after church. But this Sunday night is our Snack fellowship, and we'd love to have you join us if you're in the area and don't have a church that you're regularly attending. I'm excited about all that the Lord is doing in our church. It's just, I don't know if y'all can tell it, but the last few weeks, there's just an excitement in the air. And I love when the Spirit of the Lord is with us and you can sense it when you walk into services. These lessons, the lessons in this book are on different ladies in the Bible. So today we're starting with Ruth. 2 weeks ago, we just did the introductory part of there's a time for every season. We went through all of that about the Lord puts things in our lives at particular times. These ladies were put in particular situations throughout the Bible. And I love learning from people in the Bible that really are just, they've gone through it just like we have. I'm thankful that the Lord did not just put people in the Bible who had their life completely together and never made mistakes. I'm thankful that there are people who struggled. There are people who made bad choices. There are people who really messed up and the Lord gave them second chances. And then there are people that just go through difficulty. Ruth went through a lot. And I love studying, we're women, so I love studying women in the Bible. You relate more to them because they're like we are. And so this first lesson, the lessons are not numbered in this book. It's just based on the characters that we're going through. So we're going to start with Ruth. It will take several weeks to get through each lesson. So I hope you will stick with us through all of that. We will have a couple weeks of lessons, and then we have spring break, and we'll take a break from that. And then we'll pick back up. I think it's mid-April after that. But in Ruth, she encourages us in this study to read Ruth chapter 1 through 4 multiple times. I want to encourage you to try to do that. At least read through it once, just to get in your head how the story of Ruth goes. We all know it, but it's nice to be reminded of all the details. It was during the time of the judges, and things were not going well in the life of this family. It talks about Gideon being in place during this time in Judges chapter 6. And it would have taken place after Ehud put down the Moabite oppression. Life was not good. It was just rough during that time. And then there was a time of peace between Israel and Moab. So during this time, Elimelech decides to take Naomi and the two sons and go to Moab. He knew better. But if we are all honest with ourselves, we've all been through seasons of life where we were just over the fact we were at where we were. Like, I'm tired of this. You get in a humdrum of things, or things are difficult and you're just done with it, so you want to move on and do something different. It's almost like we need the excitement of something different. Like, I just need to change. Like, I can't even tell you how many times I've heard that phrase. It's time for a change. I need a change. Okay, but why? Why do you feel that way? And by changing to a different spot does not change the circumstances. And honestly, he knew better than that. He knew better than to leave where the Lord had put them and go to Moab, of all places. We're talking about taking godly and worldly. Those were his two choices. and he had his family in Bethlehem, Judah, and decides to take them to Moab. Just worldly, worldly, worldly. Nothing his family had ever known. Honestly, it was probably a little shocking for them to walk into all of that. But he decided to do that. Rather than sticking with, this is where the Lord has us for this time, and we're going to trust the Lord to get us through it, he decides, I want to try to get out of this season of what we're going through, the trials that we're going through. There was a famine going on. And so he thought, well, I'm out of here. Let's go somewhere else where I can figure out how to make this all work for my family. And when we take things into our own hands is when we have issues. And that's what he did. It is, God never intends for us to move away from the place that he has for us, or the place that we know is where what he has put in our life, even if it's difficult. It's never intended for us to run away from that. It's hard, but what's intended is for us to trust the Lord and ask the Lord, okay, Lord, what can you teach me through this? How are you going to help me through this? Direct me to know how to navigate this, because this is not easy. And instead, he really was just running away from it. He made a very costly decision for his family. And so she goes through the different chapters of all this. Elimelech then dies. They get to Moab. He dies. The two sons had taken wives from Moab, which was not good either. It was Orpah and Ruth. And so he had pretty much taken his sons and said, okay, here's the world, and pick you two girls from it. And that's what had happened. And then he dies. And so after his death, Naomi decides she's going back. She probably realized all along, this is not good. What are we doing? But she was trying to follow what her husband had for her. Naomi urged Orpah and Ruth to return to their families. So she says to them, okay, I'm going back. You're from here. Go live with your families. It's fine. I totally understand. Stay with your family. And so they have a choice. And Orpah and Ruth responded in two totally different ways, which is just like we are in life. We have a choice every single time. I don't care what anyone says. People can say all day long, I didn't have a choice in the matter. I had to do this. I had to move to this. I had to change this way. That is not true. We always have a choice. When it is a situation like this, Orpah could have gone with Naomi just like Ruth did. So Orpah kissed Naomi goodbye, returned to her people. Orpah represents the Gentile world who hears the gospel and then makes the choice to reject it. We see it every single day. We see it every single Sunday. We as Christians a lot of times are put in a position where God gives us a choice and we're like, no. How many times do we sit in church and the Lord speaks to us about something and we sit there and we're like, I don't know. I'm fine. I'm good. I'll take care of that later. We do that a lot, and that's the way Orpah was, and she just went back to it. Ruth decided differently, though. She decided to cleave to Naomi. And in Ruth chapter 1, verse 14, it says, and they lifted up their voice and wept again, and Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, and Ruth clave unto her. Now, she gives the definition of clave in this, and it's the word from cleave that we know from the Bible. Cleave means to cling, to stick, or adhere. And Miss Crystal in this book describes it as her friend described it to her. It's like taking two pieces of paper and sticking them together with glue, and if you pull them apart, you would damage it. That's what cleaving is. It's the same way in marriage. A husband and wife are to cleave to one another, and if they're pulled apart, it causes damage, and we know that that's the way that it is. So that word means that. And Ruth decided she was going to be stuck to Naomi, whatever that meant for her. It had to be a little foreign to her, though. She's leaving everything she's ever known from a very worldly place to go to a place that would be a whole different lifestyle for her, a whole different way of thinking. But I believe that in a person's life, when the Lord gives them light in their life, the gospel, spiritual things, and they follow that, the Lord then opens the door for them to have more. We often talk about people in foreign countries that don't have a gospel witness. And there's a verse in Romans that talks about that more will be revealed to them. That there's something inside every soul to make them want spiritual things. And if they follow that light, the Lord opens up more things. We all know that in our lives. If we follow, the Lord convicts us and we know, okay, the Lord wants me to do that. And I follow that. You all know there's something inside of you that then there's another step after that. And you just keep taking steps further and further in your walk with the Lord. So Ruth clave to her mother-in-law. And here are the verses. Verse 16 and 17 says, "And Ruth said, Entreat me not to leave thee, or to return from following after thee. For whither thou goest, I will go, and where thou lodgest, I will lodge. Thy people shall be my people, and thy God my God. Where thou diest will I die, and there will I be buried. The Lord do so to me, and more also, if aught but death part thee and me." A lot of preachers use these verses in weddings. Because honestly, the cleaving that Ruth was doing to Naomi is the same as it should be in marriage. And she was serious about it. I mean, she tells her, where you're going to be buried, where you die, that's where I'm going. I am stuck to you like glue, and there is no getting me away. She was determined, and she was committed. It's one of the greatest examples of commitment that you can find in Scripture. And it is convicting, because how many times do I not take the steps to be cleaving to the Lord the way that she was cleaving to Naomi? Ouch, ouch, ouch. I like to say, yeah, I'm following the Lord. I'm doing what the Lord wants me to do in my life. Okay, but just how serious am I about it? Because that right there is pretty serious, the way she was talking to Naomi. And that wasn't even to the Lord. I think it's a picture of that relationship. But you're talking about a mother-in-law and a daughter-in-law. We all know in this day and hour, those relationships can be a little weird. And so I haven't walked in those shoes yet. I pray that I will be a good mother-in-law and keep my nose out of the business. But that's the relationship was here, and she was that committed to that. And I think often to myself, am I that committed to the Lord? The Lord has done so much for me. Am I that committed? Entreat me not to leave thee, or to return from following after thee. For whither thou goest, I will go. Where thou lodgest, I will lodge. Thy people shall be my people, and thy God my God. Where thou diest will I die, and there will I be buried. The Lord do so to me, and more also, if aught but death part thee and me. I want to have that kind of commitment to the Lord and what he has for me in my life, but I mess it up so often. She puts the words here. She asks us to define the word commit. And in Webster's 1828, it pretty much says to give myself in trust, to entrust, or to join or put together. That should be my relationship with the Lord. I should be completely trusting in him. But how many times do I doubt what the Lord's doing? I told y'all a few weeks ago, I don't remember which lesson it was, or if it was in the older book. So many times when I pray for my children, I find myself telling the Lord, well, if you would do this and show them this and take care of this. And then it hit me, I know this, but I'm thinking to myself, the Lord does not need me to tell him how to do this. I just need to pray that he will give wisdom, give clarity, give direction, whatever that means for them. I don't need to tell him, Lord, could you do this? Could you take care of this? And be specific, like he needs a list of my directions. He does not need a list of my directions. He just needs me to trust in him and be joined so closely with him that I have that trust. Here's my problem. When I'm not joined to the Lord, cleaving unto him as I should, I generally don't trust him as I should. And then I find myself doubting every single little thing or worrying about things. I don't know about you, but I'm one of those that I let it build up and then it finally explodes and then I'm a mess because I'm I was doing so good and I just couldn't take it anymore. It's almost like I let the worry build up inside of me and then finally I'm okay, Lord, I know you have this and I am so thankful for all you do in my life. And I'm sorry that I have let all that build up inside of me because I know you have every part of my life, every part of my children's life under your control. but I need to be committed in such a way that I trust him like that. And that I don't sit around trying to tell him what to do or how to do it and then thinking, I'm not sure if this is going to work out right. I'm terrible about wanting to see way further down the road. And as my children have gotten older, we were talking about that a little while ago, I can't tell them what to do anymore. Like Julia, yes, she's still in the house, but the rest of them are old enough to make their own decisions, and I can guide them and I can pray for them, but I can't make them do it anymore. And that's where a big old part of trust comes in of, okay, Lord, help them not to make any stupid mistakes. Help them to follow you. Help them to be close to you. Help them to be cleaving to you so that they can trust in you and they can follow you, because I can't make them do it anymore. It's easy when they're little because you're like, stop doing that. Go do that. And now I'm like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? Will you please just listen to the Lord and not make those choices? We have music. That's a moment of listen to this. So let's talk about our commitment to God. All right. We won't get through all of this, but maybe most of it. Our commitment to God, it's a big part of our walk with the Lord. How committed am I to the Lord? I like to say that I'm fully committed, but when I examine my life, probably most days, I am not as committed as I really should be. So many people live their Christian lives. We just, life is good. I'm saved. This week is yucky, so we'll start again next week. Y'all ever do that with diets, or I'm going to eat better? Monday. I'll do that on Monday. Julia looked at me one time. She was like, you do realize you say that every week, right? I was like, thank you, child. But I do that with my walk with the Lord. You go through a season where it's kind of tough, and it's almost like you want to say, the Lord knows I'm tired and that this is hard, so I don't have to do all that. Yes, we do. We still have a choice to make even when life is hard. And so Naomi is probably a flawed example. We talked about at the beginning of this, I'm thankful the Lord put people like this in the Bible because I follow her example a lot of times. I shouldn't follow it, but I probably mirror her example in a lot of ways in my life. Just not making good decisions. She really got depressed. If we want to use a modern day word, that's where she was with life. And through the way that she acted, she somehow allowed Ruth to follow the Lord. Ruth somehow picked up on, I need to follow the Lord, even though Naomi's example was not the best. Verse 16 says, thy God shall be my God. Ruth did not know that life. We see people come in our churches all the time, and I feel like a flawed way of looking at things is that for so long in churches, for years, we felt like people coming in should already, like, they get saved and they should come back the next Sunday looking like a certain way, acting a certain way. Why are they still doing that? That's not how it works. I'm thankful I grew up in a Christian home. I went to church before I was even born. The first Sunday my mother could get to church, I was there. I've never known anything any different. And so for me to be judgy of people walking in with markings on their body or wearing a certain kind of clothing or looking a different way or whatever, however you want to describe it, that is not right. That is not how the Lord would treat people. But we get on our high horse sometimes and think they should know better by now. No, they shouldn't. It takes time for people to work through all of that. I was reading one of our missionaries that we support that they honestly, both of them, she had made a post about years ago in their lives and how that they had grown up really rough and how that when he got saved, she noticed a change in him. He wanted to go to church all the time. And she said, and then he starts talking about he's called to preach. She was like, he still had hair halfway down his back. And she was like, people were probably wondering what in the world, but the Lord did the work in his life. Nobody was shoving things down his throat and telling him, you have to do this or you're not going to be right with the Lord, all of that. We have to continually encourage people and we have to support them, and we can teach them things, but shoving it all down their throat is like drinking water from a fire hydrant for people who've never known that. I've known it my whole life, so it makes sense to me. But to somebody, we have new people that have just been saved in the last week. If we threw everything at them that we know about walking with the Lord, they would probably never come back because they're like, I can't do all that. Most of the time for those people, it's just getting them to come faithfully to church to start with. Start reading your Bible. Here is what you should start with. Don't start in Leviticus. That's in my Bible reading right now, so that's why I'm bringing it up. And it's come up a couple of times in church when my husband has asked, what are you reading right now? I am so thankful we don't live under that law anymore. I think I'd be like, Lord, this is a little too much. The list of things they had to do back then. Okay, so somebody new coming in that. Sorry about that. The Lord must want us to learn something today because there's been a lot of distractions. The devil does not want us to be committed to the Lord. He does not. He does not want us saying, I'm all in. He only wants us to be, okay, I kind of am there, but I'll do whatever I want to do. That is not the liberty that the Lord has given us in his word. That's not how we're supposed to live. It's not I'm saved and then I'll do whatever I want to do. And so Ruth had choices to make because she came from a world that was not good. Not good. She had bad things, bad influences. She had served false gods. She had a lot of growing to do. She is a perfect example of people that we have in our own churches that are learning and have come from that worldly life. She had to surrender to trust the Lord alone for her future. I mean, let's be honest, Naomi was not in a good place to be teaching Ruth anything. She had lost her husband, she had lost her sons, she lived in a worldly place, and now she's telling the daughter-in-laws, go back to your families, I'm going back to where I came from. And we all know from the story, she was kind of bitter. The law, and so we talked through the law in all of this. They were still living under the law. And so she asked a lot of questions in this lesson about the law. What does the law mean? I haven't spent a lot of time studying it until this lesson. And what did the law mean for people? Why was it even put in place? We all know salvation today is not based on works. But if you read through Leviticus, there was a lot of work involved in taking care of their sins. But the whole point of the law was to point people to Christ and to give them a pattern. And so we're going to go through some of that. Christ fulfilled the law on our behalf when he died on the cross for us. And so he had put the pattern of the law in there so that when he died on the cross, we would know that took care of all of it. She talks about in Galatians 3, I'm going to read these to you. You don't have to turn there unless you want to. Galatians 3:21 through 24 says, "Is the law then against the promises of God? God forbid. For if there had been a law given which could have given life, verily righteousness should have been by the law. But the scripture has concluded all under sin, that the promise by faith of Jesus Christ might be given to them that believe. But before faith came, we were kept under the law, shut up into the faith, which should afterwards be revealed. Wherefore the law was our schoolmaster to bring us unto Christ, that we might be justified by faith." And then Ephesians chapter 2, 8 and 9 says, "For by grace are ye saved through faith, and that not of yourselves, it is the gift of God, not of works, lest any man should boast." So the term justified by faith means declared righteous before God through faith in Christ. The truth is, when they were doing all of that back in Leviticus for the law, it was because they were looking toward the fact that someone would save them. People often say, well, how did that all work? Because Christ hadn't died on the cross yet. They were looking forward to that. We looked back to it. They looked toward it. That was coming. Saved by grace through faith, on the next page, grace is undeserved favor. I'm thankful for it every single day. Faith is trusting through Christ and his finished work. So we have undeserved favor by trusting through Christ and his finished work. We don't deserve anything that we have. And I believe that by living our lives just, I'm just doing good, like there's no real commitment to it, is a slap in the face, I believe, to the Lord for all that he did for us. We should at least be putting in the effort to live a committed life to the Lord. But so many times we don't. I think to myself often, I'm not doing worldly things. Like, I would not choose to do those things. Okay, but the life that I am living, how committed is it to Christ? How often throughout the day am I thinking, what would the Lord have me do in this situation? And I'll let my attitude get out of control or whatever else comes my way. And it's because I'm really not truly committed all day long to Christ. It's easy to do it on Sundays because that whole day is focused to that. Okay, but what about every day of my life? How committed am I to following the Lord? Now, why was the law important? I already kind of said this. And what does it reveal to us? The law was a guide. It revealed sin and it pointed people to Christ. That's why it was put there. So it was a guide to point people to Christ. And it gave them a guide on being committed. I mean, to do all that they had to do back in those Old Testament books, they had to be committed. I mean, really committed. I am thankful we don't have to do all that anymore. I am thankful the Lord died on the cross and we don't have to do all those things that they had to do when they were under the law. Why did salvation need to be a gift from God rather than following the law? The law could not remove the sin. It would not make it go completely away. If you noticed in all those Old Testament books, they had to repeat it over and over and over again. I'm thankful that once I'm saved, I am always saved. Jesus' blood covered everything that I ever needed, and I didn't have to do anything else. I don't have to go back and kill the birds and cut this and do that and remove this and drain this. Like, I'm so thankful for that. Those had to be some committed people to do that on a regular basis like that. But the whole point was to point them to Christ and to give them a guide on the way to live their life. Now, salvation is simple. We like to make it difficult, but it's really not. It's not an easy believism thing either. It's not just, oh, we'll just say you're saved. No, you have some doctrinal things you need to believe for salvation. We have to, first of all, admit we're sinners. Romans 3:23 tells us that. For all have sinned. We are sinners. These people who try to say, I don't do anything wrong. What? Yes, you do. Little kids, you ever talk to any of them and you're like, tell me some things you do wrong. I don't do anything wrong. And you're like, oh, yes, you do. When your mother tells you to pick that up and you throw it instead, yes, you do. But that's in everyone's flesh. No one wants to admit that they're wrong. But the greatest day in your life is when you admit that you're a sinner and you get saved. And the greatest thing you can do as a Christian is admit, I'm not doing this right and I need to change it. In order for me to grow spiritually, I have to be willing to admit that I'm still doing things wrong, that I'm still a sinner. My husband made a point in a message, and honestly, I don't know that I've ever heard this put this way. People don't go to hell as a payment for their sin. They go to hell because they choose to reject Christ, because he is the payment for sin. Jesus' blood paid for our sin. And that's what we have to realize. There's a penalty for sin. And if we don't accept Christ and his payment that he made for our sin, we're going to die and go to a devil's hell. We have to believe that Jesus died, he was buried, he rose again, and trust him alone for our salvation. But that commitment does not end at salvation. But how many people get saved and that's the end of it? How many people do you know? You've known them your whole life. They've been saved, and for a while they did good, and now it's just I'll do whatever I want to do. I'm saved, so what does it matter? No, our Christian life, in order to walk with the Lord, has to be a commitment. We have to commit to live a life for the Lord. And one thing I want to encourage you over the next week is to look at your own personal testimony. Remember how the Lord changed your life. Remember what he did to save your soul. Think back, maybe even write it down. What is your testimony? I would encourage you, if your people in your family don't know what your testimony is, your children, your friends, anybody like that, share it with them. Let them know so that they know one day when we're not here, how I got saved. They should know that experience that the Lord put in my life and how he changed my life. We might be surprised at how it changes their life if we share it with them. And so this next week, I want to encourage you, think through your testimony. Think through what the Lord has done in your life to change your life, because it ought to encourage you to take a bigger step toward being committed to him. To say, okay, Lord, I'm done playing around with this. I commit to take the next step for you. So I want to encourage you to do that. And we will pick back up at this part next week. I hope y'all have a great week. See you later. Bye-bye.